Anybody else? All right, Rich.
Uliuni mina sui hello sada. Okay, let's get started. I speak to you today in the language of this land. The understanding is that the language comes from the land. The land speaks to us, and we learn from it. We incorporate that into who we are by way of our culture. Every culture, every group of people has a language that they use to exchange information with each other in a common way of seeing the world. We understand each other when we speak our language to each other. This language is often specific to the culture. There are things expressed in a given language that are not expressed in other languages because they are relevant to the place that you come from and how you see yourself. The Benekey language, the Abenaki language, the Abenaki language, the Abernaki language. These are all different ways of saying the same word, depending on where you live and what your accent is. They all come from the original word, Wombanaki, which means dawn land. This is where we are in the grand scheme of things. We are in the first place on this continent that the sun strikes when it rises in the morning. Uli spons oui, good morning to you. This is the dawn land. It is called Indakina. This is the homeland of the Wabanaki peoples. The Wabanaki are a large group of closely related people, mostly in the northern part of the Northeast, what is called New England and the Maritimes today. These are the political constructs of the moment. But this land has been here for a very long time, and so have the people of this land. If you consult your academic experts, they will pin that number at around 12,000 years. That's how long people have been here, human beings, being human in this landscape. The Wabanaki peoples are a group that exists from east to west. I'll work my way across the landscape here. In Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, you have the Mi'kmaq people, the Micmac. Working a little further west into New Brunswick and northern Maine, the Maliseet or Wolastoqey, as they know themselves. Then you have the Passamaquoddy people on the St. Croix River, the Canadian-US border today. Then we have the Penobscot people on the Penobscot River in central Maine. Then we start to get into the large group of very spread out Abenaki, another form of the word Wabanaki, but it is applied to the westernmost group of people. And they take all different names depending on where they live. Again, it's all bound up with place. We could have the Penekey in New Hampshire. We have the Coasec in northern Vermont and New Hampshire. And down here where we are in Sokwakik country. If you did some of the readings earlier, you may have encountered that word, Sokwakik. This is the modern form for this of the original name for this region, which is Sokwakik. And that word survives into modern times by virtue of the fact that when the British first colonized what is now Northfield, Massachusetts, they adopted the name that the locals used for that place, which was Sokwakik, which is a regionalism, not a village. It's a regionalism. But they appropriated that inappropriately. You'll see a pattern here. And they applied it to the discrete location. So they took the word Sokwakik, they called it Squakig, and that was the name of Northfield, Massachusetts until 1723. The British that were there, when they were able to be there, when the original people allowed them to be there, because Northfield was settled 3 times, 3 attempts. It was Squakig until 1723, and they changed their names to Northfield. Right across the river. Where Northfield Mount Hermon sits now in Gill was actually a part of Northfield. until 1795. And that piece of Northfield was petitioned by residents who were already living there, where you folks are at the school. Please, we'd rather have our own town over here with Gill. And Northfield agreed, and so now it's Gill. So we're just moving lines around on a map and sticking labels on it, which is what Westerners do. English is a language of nouns. Putting lines around things and labels is something we are very proficient at. As I mentioned earlier, a language embodies the values of its culture. So English is 75%, 2/3 nouns. It is a language of objectification. It's the way it works. It does this well. It counts things, it assigns value to them, it labels them, it creates hierarchies, it enforces power, and it enforces separation. This is this and that is that, and never the twain shall meet. And you can see how that plays out nowadays in a lot of problems. Call it what you will. English does this well. It's the language of business around the world. Business does this well. Extractive capitalism does this well. Commodification. It just is that way. It's the system we use. It's the water we swim in. Other languages, not so much. I'm going to speak to you about a Benekey, the language of which I am a student. I think I'm out of kindergarten now. I used to think this is hopeless. At my age, I can never learn this language. This hurts my head. It is a different way of looking at the world. And that is a challenge when you've been in another system for so long, in all the ways. So I'm gaining on it. It's starting to make some sense, and it has opened my eyes. I realized when I was working with the contemporary Indigenous community here that if I was to understand that way of being in the world as a person in service for these people, which have accepted me into their community, I needed to understand the language. As one of my elders who recently walked on said, Joseph Easley Joubert, he said, in the language are the secrets of our culture. And it is a way to see the world, and it is a way to understand in a different way. It embodies values that can help us to behave differently and make different decisions because we have a different set of understandings. So how does this language work? It is a language not of nouns, but it is a language of verbs. Some of you may have read My Beloved Kin or parts of that in preparation for this. Lisa Brooks makes this abundantly clear in her writing there. Fantastic book. It centers itself specifically on this area. So if you haven't read it, I recommend it. My Beloved Kin by Lisa Brooks. Lisa is a professor at Amherst College, just to the south. And she is a Benekey. So a language of verbs, 75% verbs, as opposed to English, nouns the other way. What does that mean? It is not a language of objectification. It is a language of relationship. It speaks of action. What is happening in a given moment? How does this entity over here interact with that entity over there, and perhaps with a third entity at the same time? We take little tiny words, morphemes, often only 2, 3, 4 letters long, and we stick them together to make a big word. It's a polysynthetic language. You might compare that to German, but it's a little more musical. A Benekey is said to sound like birds singing or a babbling brook when it is spoken by a fluent speaker. I think that's just an amazing way of describing that. I'm not there yet, but I'm working on it. But I see that, and I hear that, and I feel that. So we put these little tiny words together and we make a big word. You could say that what these words are doing is forming a relationship. You take these little words that on their own don't mean a whole lot, and you put them together and you create a happening. Something is happening. And in that one word, we're going to describe the person perhaps creating the action, the one receiving the action, when it happened, how it happened, in what direction it happened, how proximate were these things. This is all in one word. And it's quite incredible. So you can actually make a word. You can create a word, and that's okay. Everyone will understand what you're saying because they recognize the roots. They can look inside that word and understand what's happening in the moment. I will give you a really short example. I'll give you several over the course of this talk, but the phrase, the word which acts as a phrase in a Benekey for the expression that I am grateful or I am thankful is ndalamizi. Ndalamizi. This has 3 words in it to make one word. It starts with the first person pronoun, just the letter N. That sound is coming from inside of me. It is an interior sound coming from in my chest, coming from my heart. This is the first person. I make this sound. And then the next sound, we're going to skip over the D because it's just a little convenient linker letter. The next sound is Allah. Ndala. Allah. Allah means the way. This is the means by which this is happening. This is the manner of this thing, Allah. And then the last sound we have is mizi, ndala mizi, ndala mizi. Mizi is a sense. It is one of your 7 senses. It is the sense that you are looking inside of yourself. It is not an external sense, such as sight or hearing or taste. It is internal sense. Your other internal sense is up here. You are thinking, you are sensing yourself, you are feeling. So when I say ndala mizi, I am thankful, what I am actually saying in a literal translation is I assess myself as being in the normal way. This is what to be grateful means. I recognize that I am in relationship with all of these gifts that are around me. We are here together. And I am grateful. To not recognize this, to be ungrateful, is to be out of line, to be dysfunctional, to be out of relationship. This begins to speak to a way of being in the world. You are in the middle. I was listening to a Lakota speaker. Now, I don't want to generalize because generalizations are dangerous, but there are commonalities among many peoples. So I'm going to make one right now. I was listening to a Lakota speaker named Teokasin Ghost Horse, who you may have heard of before. He has a bit of a good reputation. And he was speaking about walking out in his homelands in the West. He's a Lakota man. And he was walking out in the brush in the rolling countryside, just monotony as far as one could see. He was in the middle of nowhere, he said. But he was not. He was in the center of everything. This turns that paradigm around. Instead of being the center of attention, the individual in a world of strangers around you, you are in the center. not because you're the most important, but because everyone around you is looking at you. All of them. The antelope, the sagebrush, the grass, the sandhill cranes, the lizards, the ants. You're in the center of everything. There is no middle of nowhere. We all have to be somewhere. Place is important. If you look up indigeneity in the dictionary, the simple paraphrase definition of that is the original people of a place. I think we can probably agree on that. Nice, safe definition. Original people of a place. We think of those original people as any one of a various number of groups, the Dene, the Mohawk, the Benekey, the Passamaquoddy, the Maori, all these people, original people. We don't think much about the place. You're missing half of the equation. Indigenous people are attached to a place. That is what makes them indigenous, not the people part. There's people everywhere. The people are in places. And so this is not a binary. This is a dualism. These things go together. They are inseparable. The people are the land, and the land is the people. They see themselves as exactly the same thing. They are not separate from it. And if you assault this relationship, if you sever this relationship, if you damage this relationship, as has happened with colonization on this continent and all over the world, one does irreparable harm, as is the situation on this continent and all over the world. We need to come back into relationship. I see this as the primary thing that we need to be paying attention to. I call it the disease of separation. The Benekey people are the people who know this place the best. They have been here with their ancestors and their antecedents for 12,000 years. They know a few things. How is it that one can go up and down the river here, the Kwenitegok, the long river, which the school sits on? How is it that we can go up and down this river and say, show me where the Indians are? And I would say, I can't. Is that a tribute to sustainability? I think so. It's a testimony. You can go up to Brattleboro, Kwenitegok, where I live, which sits on the Kwenitegok, right on the water, prime real estate. And we'd love to use our waterfront here, where the bridge goes over to Hinsdale. If you've been up to Brattleboro, you're probably familiar with that. That's probably the best place that Brattleboro could access its waterfront, because we have a railroad cutting us off, right? But we can't use the waterfront there. Why? You might ask me, show me proof that Brattleboro exists. I'll show you. Underneath that bridge, there is a pile of coal tar sludge, an average of 8 feet thick, 150 feet out into the river, and hundreds of feet downstream. It is the remains of a coal gasification plant that sat on the shore there by the railroad for 80 years, making coal gas out of coal that came in on the railroad. We can't use our waterfront. EPA knows it's there. Everybody knows it's there. The public doesn't know it's there. We don't talk about these things. But do we know Brattleboro's been here? Oh boy, we know Brattleboro's been here. I could show you. We can't touch that coal tar because it would break up and go downstream to Northfield and Gill, and everybody would be pissed. So I looked at some of the prompts in this wonderful ArcGIS story map that Becca put together. She did a fantastic job. I applaud that. I hope that remains available for a long time. And I'm just looking at a couple of these questions she has here. 500 years ago, who occupied the land where you are? I'll try to answer that a little bit. We've already touched on it slightly. The Sokwakik people, the Sokwakik, a group of the Benekey, larger Benekey group. I want to also emphasize, while I'm throwing these words around, that these are mostly labels applied by Western researchers, academics, ethnologists after the fact, because that's what we do. But it helps us to make sense, and I'm going to use these terms so we all understand what we're talking about. Otherwise, it just gets into the weeds really quick. But weeds are nice. I like weeds. So where are we? We're in Sokwakik country. Sokwakik, what does that mean? That means the separated land. Compound word, sokwa, to break apart or to separate. Kik, land. Why is this the separated land? There's a couple different theories on that. Part of the problem here is we are trying to recover knowledge that has been hidden, that has been obscured, and that has been intentionally buried. It's called genocide, folks. It's still happening. Witness the fact that the Benekey language is probably only has, I don't know what the number is, less than 10 birth speakers left. There are a lot of students, such as myself. We're working hard, but the language is almost gone. I think we're going to bring it back. This is a tool in the toolbox of ethnocide, genocide. Get rid of the language. Get rid of those people who do these things that don't fit into the way we would like to do things. So here we are in the separated land. One of the stories about that is that this is the largest, this is the furthest flung group of Benekey people from their close relatives to the east. Nowadays, they call them the Western Benekey, furthest west in the homelands. The homelands for the Wabanaki people run from Vermont all the way over to Nova Scotia and up into Quebec and down into Massachusetts, where you are, as far south as the Great Falls, sometimes called Peskiumskut, sometimes called Musquamacook, sometimes called a word that I do not like to use, Turner's Falls. Mr. Turner, not a nice guy. I don't like to keep his memory alive. Down at the Great Falls, we run into our relatives, the Nipmuc people, the Pecumtuck people, others who come in, allies, the Mohicans, the Wampanoag, the Nonotuk, the Waranoko, sometimes people who are not allies, the Mohawk, often. Down there's a road called the Mohawk Trail. You might have heard of it. It's not the Mohawk Trail. It's not their trail. They came in here to kill. I recognize that they were involved in empire building. I recognize that. People change, people do things. We all make poor decisions at the time, and hopefully we learn from them. And now the Mohawk and the Benekey, we're all in the same boat. So we learn from history. Mohawk Trail is called the Mohawk Trail because the Massachusetts legislature named it such as a tourist road in the 19-teens. It was never called the Mohawk Trail before then. It is called branding. It is called capitalism. It is not the Mohawk Trail, but there you go. There are a lot of stories. Many of them we don't know. I'm just sharing a few with you today. Expand this world for you. All of these stories are here. They're all still here. You just have to find them. The stories are not lost. As our elder Wayne Newell, Passamaquoddy up in Maine says, stories are not lost. We are the ones who are lost. We just have to find them. All of these people that have ever been here, thousands and thousands and thousands of them, we walk on their graves. They're not marked. It is not a cultural habit to put up a stone marker that will last in perpetuity to perpetuate that individual's legacy. Those people are part of a community. They go into the ground and they turn back into the earth. And they become their grandchildren. All of these people are still here. If you look up the deeds for the town of Northfield, you will see the British in the late 1600s, early 1700s, buying land from the locals. I think it's probably pretty much undeniable that most of these deeds are suspect. The circumstances, the signers, the conditions, the knowledge under which they were signed, but they are held up as evidence that everything was done fair and square here. And then everybody else went away, and here we are. So you all announced yourselves and where you're from, and this is reality. I welcome you. We are all here now. We are all here now. We still have a question in front of us. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? We need to figure this out. Some of the decisions that have been made in the past have not served us well, either locally or on a global scale. I point to the disease of separation. We need to reconnect. And that is going to start on an individual level, me with you. Kwenitegok, hello, my friends. And we go down Nami Olan. It's good to see you. I really welcome this opportunity to speak with you. It's kind of serious stuff, but it's like really basic, and it's something that we can actually wrap our heads around and handle. We're all here now. As far as I'm concerned, time does not exist. Time is a construct. I have finally managed to get it out of my head. I do have a job. I have to, make some deadlines and stuff like that, but functionally, it's gone. All there is the present moment. The past is here. The past is with us. We are the past incarnate. Energy and matter are conserved. So here we are. I am my grandparents. In a Western scientific sense, I carry that DNA. I am also the result of everyone who has ever lived here in Kwenitegok. They are in the water, they are in the air, they are in the dirt, and they have created me. The future is here as well. We are the future. The future will come from what we do today. The decisions that we make in the moment. This is the only thing that we as human beings actually have. The ability to make a decision. In the moment. And it all goes from there. And they're not all going to be good. I screw up all the time. This is called being human. Your decisions are made based on what you know and what you internalize. They are made based on the stories that you listen to. We tend to hear stories coming from a certain angle. And so they influence the way we make our decisions. If you listen to some other stories from some other people who tell stories in a different way, you can make some different decisions. You want those decisions to move toward what I call balance. You want to move toward balance because things tend to move toward chaos. They move toward disorder, entropy, right? Entropy happens. You want to make some good decisions and move back toward balance. How are you going to make those decisions? Listen to some other stories, gain some understandings. In native world, that can be called original instructions, traditional values, traditional teachings. All cultures have these, but we're moving toward monoculture, globalism, homogeneity, in service to the dollar, in service to the individual. It's all about power. Power is a really big thing in a Benekey world. It is all about power, but it is not power amassed unto an individual. It is recognizing that power resides in everything. Spirit resides in everything. Everything has more or less of that. And one wants to recognize that. One wants to be aware when one is standing in the center of everything, looking around, and it's all looking at you. And you're trying to decide, what am I going to do right now in the present moment? What is the best decision to make? You want to recognize that this power is in play and it is moving. It is moving all the time. There is no time. What time actually is change. The word is called change. And it is all of these things shifting around, moving from one place to another, spirit and power moving. And you want to recognize this and be in relationship to it. You want to aid it in moving toward balance. Up here in Kwenitegok, the traditional name for this place, which again is a compound word, wantas. Wantas means something that is lost. Tuk is a river, the Wantas Tuk, just like the Kwenitegok. A tuk is a river. It is water in dynamic motion. It is describing a way of being, that word. It is water that is being a certain way. Wantas Tuk, at the river where something is lost. I'm not going to get into that story right now, but there's a story there. Kwenitegok, at the river where something is lost. This is where I am. This is what I am here in Brattleboro. At Kwenitegok, under the water, because of the construction of the Vernon Dam just upriver from you folks, just below me, in 1909, the water level was raised 30 feet in the Kwenitegok. It is the first hydroelectric dam on the river. Now there are many. The Connecticut River watershed is the most impounded watershed on the continent. Little known facts. First dam at Vernon raised the water level up, and at Kwenitegok, upstream 10 miles, the water level came up about 15 feet, and it submerged a set of petroglyphs. There are petroglyphs carved into the rock on the bank of the West River, the Wantastuk. Why are those petroglyphs there? Those petroglyphs were placed by people of power any number of years ago. They may be older than the pyramids. We like to think of that as being a long time ago. Happened here too, in a different way. These petroglyphs were placed by people of power. You might call them medicine people. What they were doing when they did this was they were recognizing the transition and the balance of power that was going on in this particular place. This is a very, very significant place. Petroglyphs are a rare incident in the Northeast. Very, very rare. They are only at places of power. One of those places is here. We found a record in the Brattleboro Historical Society. A friend of mine found this while she was doing some research. And it offered an answer as to why the petroglyphs are here. In this handwritten transcription of an interview that somebody happened to make with a local person in the early 1900s. This man was interviewed. He had grown up in Brattleboro as a boy and used to go down to the West River and play with his fellows, go fishing, go swimming, messing around, doing kid things, like I used to do as a kid, and which unfortunately not a lot of kids do these days. He was interviewed, and he told the interviewer that when he was a little kid, there was a place in the river right opposite the petroglyphs where there was a whirlpool in the bottom of the river, and things would disappear down that hole. And one of his friends almost got stuck in that hole, and they managed to get him out. And it is really, really strange that this is not mentioned anywhere in Brattleboro's history, anywhere else. One handwritten transcription of an interview of a man who had grown up playing there, or who had played there when he was a child. But it answers the question. If you know anything about a Benekey cosmology, many cosmologies, you know that there's more than one world. There's this world that we walk around on, the surface. In a Benekey, this is called Uskikamikwinoak. We are the people who walk around on the surface. We are earthlings. There's the world above, the sky world from which we come, stardust. The people know where we come from. There's the world below, our mother that we return into and which gifts everything to us. That world below can be the earth, subterranean, and it can be underwater. And you can travel between those worlds. You do when you're born. You do when you die. If you're a person of great power, you can travel between those worlds. This is what medicine people can do. You have to go through some sort of an entrance into those places, though. A whirlpool is one such entrance into the underworld. Things can go down into the underworld. Things can come up from the underworld. They have great power. You want to make sure that these things stay in balance. You want to answer those things with their counterpart, not their enemy, their counterpart. Because you're seeking balance. As a medicine person, you are looking, this is your job. This is your job to look out for the well-being of your people. And so you leave a message there. The petroglyphs, they are answering what is happening there. They are a message that is standing there for thousands of years. It is not about the medicine person that carved them. It doesn't matter. They were doing their job. What matters is that they were honoring relationship at that place. That relationship is still being honored today. In Dalamizi, for which I am grateful. All of these things are here. They're still here. All of these people that have ever been here, they're still here. They're walking around with us. They help us. It's not all scary, scary stuff. It's just the way it is. So how is it that we don't know this? We don't know this. We don't know most of this. We're not told this. Well, it doesn't fit into the narrative. If you are looking at everything around you as your relation, all of our relations. Like we are brothers and sisters with what is around us. The father is the sky, the mother is the earth, the moon is a grandmother, the sun is our grandfather. This is what enables us to be alive here. All of these things, these are our multiple creators, our enablers, and everything else that is here is brothers and sisters, quite literally our family. You walk into the woods, you are among family. It is a happy place. You look at a maple tree, the maple tree is looking back at you. Have a conversation. You can have it in your head, you can have it in your heart. Have a conversation. Why not? You will learn something from the maple tree. I guarantee it. Guarantee it. When one does not look at the maple tree as a relative, as a relationship, it turns into board feet of lumber. When one does not look at the bedrock as your grandfather, it turns into crushed gravel and fill. I'm not saying that you don't need these things sometimes, but how do we go about that? Are we thankful? Do we only take what we need, or do we amass wealth to ourselves as individuals? It is not about the individual. It is about the community. It is about relationship. We look at each other as human beings first, right? We look at our own kind first. Of course, that's natural. But it's not just about us. The anthropocentricity, get rid of it. We're all relations here. When a Benekey person looks at a tree, for example, again, the language, if you don't know what kind of a tree that is, you might ask the question of the person next to you, awani na abazi. And they would say, senomonzi na abazi. That is a maple tree. But I didn't say, what is that tree? I said, who is that tree? Awani. Who? That tree is a someone. I know that. It's right in the language. And the person answers back, that someone, that one over there, that is a maple tree. Senomonzi, that is a rock tree. That Benekey word for maple tree carries through into the Yankee word for a sugar maple. We call it a rock maple. That is an inherited term from the Benekey people, the rock tree. We all speak some Benekey. It's not all that foreign, The Benekey word for yes, Do you ever say You're speaking Benekey. That is an Americanism for assent, for saying yes, that has traveled around the world now. And it was adopted from the Algonquian speaking peoples. Now you know another one, Ndalamizi. I am grateful. I am in the normal way. We're getting into the last 5 minutes here. Am I supposed to leave room for questions right now? Nanatawa, Margaret, you are muted.
I am muted. There's a Q&A at 11:20.
Okay.
So you can do whatever you want, Rich.
Okay.
You can have time for questions, some now and later. But we break at 11 and then we meet back again as a full group.
Okay. I will spend the last 4 minutes just talking a little bit about exactly where NMH sits.
Great.
Within Indigenous homelands. In these deeds, which Northfield has faithfully recorded, detailing land transfers, there are names of Native people written down in these deeds, the people who lived here 350 years ago. we have some of these names. I find them very interesting. They're actually, you can translate them. They mean something. They're not just an abstract name. They tend to be honorifics. I think that they are not the actual names of the people. Usually they are the roles that they played, the way that they were seen. And it may have been their public name. Not always, you don't always share your real name publicly. Some of you may be familiar with the story of Ishi. It's a classic anthropological story of the last savage Indian that lived out in California. Ishi was a native man who was the last of his band and was brought into civilization and maintained at a museum as an exhibit, a living exhibit, and died of tuberculosis after a few years. But I'm sure many of you read about Ishi. Ishi was the name given to him by the anthropologist. It simply means man in that language. Ishi never actually shared his name for reasons that I was just talking about. You do not hold your name yourself. You are named by others. You are recognized by others because you are in community. They see you as this. And Ishi never spoke his name because he said there was no one to say it to him. There's a difference there. You are called. When I introduce myself, I say, Indelewizi Litz. I say, I am called Rich by others because I am in a relationship with all of you. Right now, you can call me Rich. So these people that lived here, one of the deeds say that the land from Bennett's Brook, which is right at your north border there, Bennett's Brook, Bennett's Meadow, was owned by a person named Asogoa, a woman. Women owned the land. Land produces life. Women produce life. There is an intimate relationship there. They own it with and on behalf of the men, but in many of these deeds, you'll see a woman's name mentioned. So Asogoa was mentioned there. She was the daughter of Suwanet, which the deed says was the true and rightful owner of the land. That was her father. I think that might have been a little juggling of the facts by the British drawing up the deed. Oh, look, there's Suwanet. That's the dad. He must be in charge. Suwanet translates very, very easily. It means somebody from the south. Suwanet. And his daughter, Asogoa, translates quite poetically to slender white pine, a tree. That's his daughter. These are people who lived right where you are. Often that area of the countryside is described as being Pocumtuck land. I think it's not that simple. I think of the Pocumtuck people as being a little more centered on Deerfield and the Deerfield River. The Pocumtuck, the river itself, Pocumtuck and the Pocumtuck people named after the river, their river, Nsibu, my river. And they're very close relatives, friends, allies usually of the Benekey people, the Sokwakik people up the river on the other side of the Great Falls. And so those lines are very, very blurry, very, very blurry. And there was marriage going back and forth and diplomacy and trade, all of these things. And so the Pocumtuck and the Sokwakik people are really blurry right there, but it is not exclusively Pocumtuck land. And I point to the fact that the Northfield people said that that area was referred to by the Indians as Natanis, Natanis, or Natanis, if you look at it in the deeds. What does that mean? Natanis means daughter or cousin or female cousin. It is describing the relationship of that land in reference to the people who are there, the Pocumtuck and the Sokwakik. This is cousin land. This is daughter land. Asogoa, Suwanet. These are all family. It's not just Pocumtuck. We share this place. And so get rid of the lines, get rid of the boxes, get rid of the labels, free your mind, say thank you to your relatives. And I'm going to leave it right there.